Hi and thanks for watching. In this video we will look at the Chen Tai Chi posture, cover, fist and punch. This is an important posture or important point in the routine because in especially the old frame first routine, the Lao Jia Ilu, or the main training routine, this is the first opportunity to do a Fajin. So it's this shift in the expression of Chen style Tai Chi, going through the slow, smooth, fluid, relaxed, collected movements, and then suddenly changing to something that is fast and explosive and forceful. And then returning back to the slow, soft, relaxed, fluid movements. So this sudden burst of movement and power is an important piece of expression and skill training in Chen style Tai Chi. And in the routine, actually also in the shorter routines, often this is the move that presents us with the first opportunity to show that capability. So what we're going to do in this video is break it down. We're going to look first at the posture and its movement, starting with the feet and the hips. Then we're going to look at the posture and what happens in positioning and movements of the arms and hands. Then we're going to look at that movement and how it's being driven by the movement of the lower dantian. And then what we'll do is we'll look at the power generation, the lines of force, and how the Fajin can be trained and practiced. So, first of all, of course, there is the move itself. The move itself, cover, fist, and punch. Yanshou Gongquan. That's the movement itself. There's the punch at the end, but there's the lead up to it, starting with both the arms and the legs, the weight transfer forward and back before we do this punch. So let's break it apart a little bit and look at how that is done. So looking at the legs and the weight distribution first. Right foot, where our weight is on the right foot, left foot steps forward, right? Heel first, followed by the toes. We transfer the weight forward and we turn into that front hip. We shift the weight back and we turn into the back hip. And then we transfer our weight forward and turn into the front hip once more. That last turn into the hip is when we have the punch. That's when the timing of the punch happens. Right. So there's this weight transfer forward, back, and forward. And in addition to that, there is this turning into the front hip, turning into the back hip, turning into the front hip once more. As we go through this motion, it's important not to forget the basic structure and requirements of Chen style Tai Chi through the legs, which I often describe as a bracing out of the knees, so that when we shift our weight and turn into the front leg and turn into the front hip, it's important to make sure that this rear leg doesn't collapse, so the knee doesn't turn in, or also make sure that the back leg doesn't extend. So it's something where we're doing Chen style Tai Chi. So the things to avoid is something where this leg rolls in, or something where this leg rolls in and or extends, so the knee straightening out. Neither of these things are what we want to maintain Chen style Tai Chi in its frame. What we want is something where the legs stay braced out. So even though we're on our front leg and turning into that hip, this back knee stays flexed and turned out. So instead of this, we keep it here. Same thing with the back. When I shift our weight back and turn into that front hip, the same thing. This front knee stays braced out. Instead of collapsing or rolling in, we have something where we keep our legs braced out, our shins relatively upright, and so the movement is one that happens here. There's less of that turn than you would otherwise do, and it is a motion that happens where from our weight on the back leg, we come forward, turn into the front hip, shift the weight back, turn into the back hip, shift the weight to the front, turn into the front hip. So a figure of eight motion that's happening with the hips. Right? Turn into the front hip, hip goes back. Shift the weight, turn into the back hip, hip goes back on the other side. Once more, shift the weight forward, turn into that front hip, and that's what drives the punch. So The requirements here, when we break it down to this level of detail, is that there's actually what I'll call 6 parts, right? Weight shift, turn into the front hip, weight shift, turn into the back hip, and then 2 more, 1 more weight shift forward, and once more turning into the back hip, or front hip. So 6 parts. Those parts, starting with weight on the right leg, keeping the weight on the back foot, front foot steps forward. First, shift the weight forward. Second, turn into the front hip. Third, shift the weight back. Fourth, turn into the back hip. Fifth, shift the weight forward. Sixth, turn into the front hip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a lot of parts. We will see in a moment that this gets grouped and smoothed out into something that has a better flow and is easier to manage in terms of sequence. But if we don't understand these key points, all 6 parts, then we run the risk of losing one of these and having it drop out of the sequence. So that's the movement of the arms, that's the movement of the legs, the weight transfer, and the turn into the hip. This is no different than the rest of the routine and how the rest of the routine is driven by this figure of 8 motion, this weight transfer and turning into the hip, front and back. But then we add in the arms, right? So cover fist and punch, right? Cover fist, so the hand movements. With the left foot forward, left hand comes over top of the right wrist. The hands are at the midline, palms facing down, weight on the back leg. As we shift our weight forward and turn into that front hip, the right hand is going to extend forward. We shift our weight back, and that draws this right hand into the side of the body, and the left hand draws forward. Right? In relation to our own body, it's just on the left side of the midline at chest height. From here, the weight shifts forward once more. We turn into that front hip, and that draws the front hand back, and we strike with the right arm out. Right? End position is something where this left hand ends up here at the side of the ribs. Right hand shoulder height, punching off on a 45-degree angle. Right? The chest is facing in line with the front foot, so instead of it overturned, it's turned just to face front in relation to our foot, with the arm striking off on a 45-degree angle. Right? So those are the movements of the hands. If we link it to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then we end up with something where we're here, and it's 1, 2, right hand going forward. 3, 4, right hand draws back, left hand goes forward to chest height. And then 5, 6 is with the punch. The hand that's extended comes in, the hand that was by the side of the body, the right hand, extends out. Facing the same way as you, from here, step the left foot forward, keep the weight back, right? Weight goes forward, 1, 2, right hand out. Shift the weight back, turn into the back hip, left hand goes out, 3, 4. Shift the weight forward, punch, 5 and 6. Good. Variations of note is as we draw this right hand back, the right hand turns over, closing into a right fist, and it can draw back to one of 2 locations. One is just in front of the right hip or just below the ribs. Right? The other option is for it to draw in a little bit higher in front of the chest here. Right? You can, both of these are fairly standard in terms of hand positioning for the right hand prior to the punch. What I am now thinking of doing is to consciously designate certain punches within the routine so that we're changing from a low punch to a high punch and back to a low punch. Main requirement, I think, would be that the first time that we do cover fist and punch, and then the last time, which would actually be punch the groin, But those ones are done with the position of the hand being low by the hip or just below the ribs. Here, and of course at the very beginning of the routine, also set low. But keep in mind that it is also entirely possible to do this motion, this posture, this motion, and just prior to the punch, having the right hand at a chest height, still on the side, to the side of the midline. And the rest of the posture is exactly the same. So that's the movement of the feet, that's the movement of the hands. This is looking at the move and divvying it up into 6 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we, to make it less cumbersome, though, we can maintain these 6 requirements, but group them. And so then we're looking at the punch in terms of open, close, and then strike. So in this case, what we're doing is something where there's this opening that happens, then there's a closing in, bringing the arms in towards the midline, and then from there, the strike itself. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but when we do this, we are grouping it. So if we do it still with that count of 6, but grouping it, we end up with, from here, 1, 2, and then 3, 4, keeping the weight back, then shift the weight forward, 5, 6, punch. Same thing, coming back with the weight on the back leg, left hand over top of the right. 1, 2 is open. 3, 4 is close. 5, 6 is a strike. So now we have the movement of the arms, we have the movement of the legs grouped to become open and close, followed by the weight shifting forward and the strike, the drilling motion of the strike. If we relate this back to the movement of the dantian, it's again keeping all of these things still in place, but changing our focus, so adding an additional layer of meaning to the same posture and routine, or this point in the routine. And in this case, from here, what we're looking at is the rolling action of the dantian. It's set up here on the right side, and the dantian goes through and rolls forward for the open, and then from there, it rolls back for the close. From the close, we have another rolling forward, which ends up providing us with the strike, the Fajin. The usefulness of thinking of it this way, of course, is that it smooths things, it brings all of the different bits back to the core of the body, and having us coordinate things with a single focus rather than thinking of different things that the extremities are doing. Right? And a key thing for this is to keep the hips relaxed and to have the weight steady. When we're doing this motion, the cover fist and punch is very easy for something where we're set up here. And then when we're here, it's very easy for the weight to come up, the hip to stiffen, and then we end up in an entirely different posture and an entirely different way, a mechanism and line for the force that's being driven through. One that's much harder to recover and return to the flowing fluid state that we were just in previously. And essentially, we lose that part, meaning that from here, we end up in a place that is instead of here. Short version of this is, don't let the weight come up. Always keep the weight level, always keep the weight down. Also, always keep the shoulders set down and learn how to drive the force through the arm, not into the shoulder. Right? But now that we're thinking about things in terms of the rotation of the dantian, right? The lower abdomen, from here, there's a roll forward, 1, 2, which is the open, the roll back, 3, 4, which is the close, and the driving through, 5, 6, which of course is the Fajin, the strike. Check to make sure that you're set down into the hip, that you haven't come up, that everything stays in a way that is able to become fluid and relaxed, immediately finishing the strike. Power generation. How the body is moving to generate this strike. First thing to keep in mind is how it's not being generated, right? Obviously, of course, it's not something where it's happening because we're taking this arm and pushing it out. It's not happening from the arm, doesn't happen from the shoulder. It also doesn't happen from the right hip and doesn't happen from the right leg. It's very tempting for something to be here and to drive the force from pushing from the back leg. Right? Again, this is what causes the body to come up and drive the force into a position where there's a stiffness that occurs both in the hip and the low back. So it doesn't come from pushing from the back leg. It doesn't even come from thrusting forward with the right hip from the rear hip. It's not this motion here that drives. Again, doing it from here will just create this tension in the low back and a jamming into the shoulder. Where the force is being generated from is the rolling of the dantian and this inward closing motion into the left hip, into the front hip. This is the driving motion. This causes a rotation that drives the left arm back and the right shoulder and forearm forward. Here. For this to function properly, of course, as I said before, the hips need to stay relaxed. The center of gravity needs to stay low. In addition to that, the center and core of the body needs to stay stable. Not too stiff, which is something that can happen when we're into something where we're pushing from the back leg or from the hip. It should also not be something where it ends up being too loose. All this focusing on Tai Chi movements being soft, focusing on being relaxed, sometimes ends up where people end up too loose through the core of the body. And then when everything is too loose, a lot of the force gets dissipated through this area here. Right. We need this area to stay in alignment with each other from the hips to the shoulders or the shoulders to the hips, and needs to be still and connected. So that what we have is a smooth transfer of power where there's this rolling into the front hip, which then allows a transfer of force from this closing action into the leg, which then comes through and across the back into the front shoulder, the right shoulder. The right shoulder, then the force travels around, causing a closing motion of the arm. So from here, turning in, wrapping around the shoulder, coming through, allowing and driving the rotation of the fist. So we have this closing and coiling in motion through the leg, this rotational motion through the torso, and then this closing motion that happens through the arm. This is also why this closing backward motion of the front hip, the left hip, allows us to have this left elbow strike backwards as the right hand strikes forward, so that the elbow strike and the front fist on the right striking happens simultaneously from the same dynamic. It's not one or the other, both happen naturally as an extension of this closing and wrapping, coiling motion that happens through the body. So those are all of the dynamics and requirements and things to keep in mind when we're doing cover fist and punch, right? Last thing to mention, the name itself, Yanshou Gongquan. So Yanshou, cover fist, so we're here, setting the weight arms down, setting the shoulders down, setting the dantian down into this right leg. So cover fist. The second half, Gongquan, Gong, refers to the arm. Specifically, it refers to the upper arm, to the humerus. And so it's cover the fist and then humerus fist. Cover palm or cover hand. Yanshou means to cover the hand or covering hand. And then from there, strike humerus and fist. Sometimes fist also means, this last character, chuan, can mean fist, can also mean strike, but it means striking with the arm, an arm strike. So the last thing to keep in mind when we're thinking about the generation of force is to think of it as something where the force is being generated from this turning of into the lower dantian, into the front hip, left hip, transferring through the body and extending through the shoulder into the elbow. From the elbow through to the fist is just seen as a single unit, right? So it is something where the force needs to come through, and think of the force being driven into both elbows, rather than the temptation, which is to focus only on the front fist. So when we're doing the strike, it's often tempting to tighten the fists, to have the snap being generated by a muscular tension. However, the main thing that this would have is to slow down the force and to impede the transfer of power. We often do that because then we get the feedback of our muscles, and therefore it feels like we're doing something. Curiously enough, when we're doing this properly, we actually should not feel anything in the musculature with the strike. Right? What provides the Fajin, the explosive power, and the sudden stop, the snap, is because the ligaments and tendons through the frame of the body have reached their limit. So we allow things to go all the way to their end limit, and then by their natural extension, they will stop. This provides the quick recovery, the quick return of the power back to the core. It also is a training that conditions the ligaments and tendons of the body. So when we're doing this cover fist and punch, when we're doing this first Fajin, first of all, keep the center of gravity low. Keep the hips relaxed. Figure out how to guide the force not into the shoulder, not into the neck, not into the head, but through the shoulder, into the arm, coiling through, into both elbows. And then allow the force to extend out to the extremities, right? So that we have something which is open, close, and straight. From there, the movement returns to something fluid and smooth and soft and relaxed, easily and naturally. So I hope this information is helpful for you. Keep training, keep practicing, and take care.